Queen Meridian stood and stretched her wings to their full span, nearly 40 feet of iridescent membrane and crystalline bone. The assembled engineers backed away to give her room. She flexed and adjusted, testing every joint and membrane section with careful precision. "It feels right," her mental voice sang with joy. "Completely right. No pain, no weakness, no limitation." "Then let's see if you can fly," King Obsidian said, moving to open the massive doors that led to the launch platform outside. The entire engineering corps gathered to witness the moment. Talia stood between Josette and Ren, her heart pounding as Queen Meridian moved onto the platform. The wind caught her wings, and for a moment the membrane rippled and flexed, adjusting to the air currents. Then Queen Meridian leaped, her powerful legs driving her upward as her wings snapped open and caught the wind. She rose into the morning sky with powerful strokes, climbing higher and higher until she was just a glittering speck against the clouds. The watching crowd erupted in cheers. Dragons in the air around the citadel joined her, their joyous calls echoing across the city. Talia felt tears running down her cheeks and didn't bother to wipe them away. Queen Meridian soared in dove, performing maneuvers that demonstrated complete control and confidence. She flew for nearly an hour before finally gliding back to the platform, landing with perfect grace. "I am whole again," she announced to everyone present. "Thanks to the insight of a young human who saw what we could not. Who reminded us that sometimes the simplest answer is the correct one." In the weeks that followed, Talia's repair technique was studied, documented, and adapted for other medical applications. The Royal Engineering Corps began teaching seminars on flexible support systems and the importance of working with natural healing rather than against it. Callum Reid himself developed an entire course on what he called supportive intervention versus corrective intervention. But for Talia, the greatest reward came from an unexpected source. On her last day as an apprentice, having completed her year-long exchange program, Queen Meridian summoned her to the throne room. The Queen lay on a raised platform with King Obsidian beside her. Josette and Ren stood nearby, along with Forge Master Brennick and the senior members of the Engineering Corps. Talia Vex, Queen Meridian's formal mental voice filled the chamber. "You came to us as an apprentice seeking to learn. Instead, you became a teacher, reminding us that expertise can sometimes blind us to simple truths. You restored not just my wings but my hope, and through that, you gave the kingdom back its queen." She gestured, and Josette stepped forward carrying a small box. Inside lay a medallion of crystalline metal, engraved with wings spread wide. "This is the mark of a master engineer," Queen Meridian continued. "Typically earned only after decades of study and practice. But mastery is not measured in years but in understanding. You have demonstrated understanding that transcends conventional education. Wear this with pride, and know that you will always have a place among us." Talia accepted the medallion with shaking hands. "Your Majesty, I don't know what to say." "Say you will return to us," King Obsidian rumbled. "Say that this is not farewell but simply until we meet again." "I will return," Talia promised, fastening the medallion around her neck. "This place, these people, they've taught me more than I could have imagined. Not just about engineering, but about the courage to trust simple solutions and the wisdom to know when elaborate approaches miss the point." As she prepared to board the transport that would take her back to Earth, Ren bounded up with his usual enthusiasm. "I'm going to study supportive intervention," he announced. "I want to be able to see problems the way you do." Talia smiled at him. "Then remember this, the best engineers don't just know how to build and fix things. They know when to step back and let systems heal themselves. Sometimes the greatest skill is knowing when not to intervene." The transport lifted off, and through the viewport, Talia watched the grand citadel recede into the distance. Above the towers, dragons wheeled and soared, and among them, she spotted Queen Meridian's distinctive silver-blue scales catching the sunlight. The Queen's mental voice touched her one last time. "Fly safe, young engineer. And remember that you taught us something invaluable." That fresh eyes and simple solutions can accomplish what centuries of expertise cannot. That sometimes the most sophisticated answer is to get out of the way and let nature take its course. As if summoned by his name, Brennick entered the chamber followed by Callum Reed and 3 other senior engineers. They carried a device Talia recognized from her studies as a resonance scanner, a piece of equipment that could map internal structures without invasive procedures. Apprentice Vex, Brennick greeted her with a nod. Your timing is perfect. We're about to see if your unconventional approach has achieved what our conventional methods could not. Queen Meridian's mental voice touched everyone present. I can already tell you it has worked. The constant pain that plagued me for 5 days is completely gone. My wings feel whole again, even if they look quite silly wrapped in silver tape. Let's see what the scanner reveals, Brennick said, positioning the device near the left wing. He activated it, and holographic displays materialized in the air, showing cross-sections of the wing's internal structure. Talia held her breath as the images resolved. The crystalline bone structure glowed in the hologram, and where there had been fractures and breaks, she could now see new growth. Delicate threads of crystal were weaving through the damaged areas, knitting the breaks back together. By the ancestors, Callum breathed. The fractures are healing. Actual cellular regeneration is occurring. Brennick moved the scanner along the wing's length, and each section showed the same pattern. Where Talia's tape provided support and alignment, Queen Meridian's natural healing abilities had activated and were actively repairing the damage. The membrane tears show even more dramatic improvement, Josette reported, studying her own handheld scanner. New tissue is growing from the center of each tear outward. The tape has created the perfect environment for regeneration by maintaining proper tension and preventing re-injury. A new presence entered the chamber, and even Queen Meridian lifted her head in acknowledgement. King Obsidian was massive, his black scales seeming to absorb light rather than reflect it. As ruler of the Western Peaks and Meridian's mate, he had flown through the night to be present for this critical evaluation. Is it true? His mental voice rumbled like an earthquake. My queen will fly again? The healing has begun, Your Majesty, Brennick replied respectfully. Barring complications or re-injury, Queen Meridian should regain full flight capability within 6 to 8 weeks. King Obsidian turned his gaze to Talia, and she fought the urge to step backward. His eyes were like polished obsidian, reflecting her own nervous face back at her. You are the human apprentice who accomplished this? I just provided support so Her Majesty's body could heal itself, Talia managed, her voice steadier than she felt. Do not diminish your achievement, King Obsidian said. 20 masters failed where you succeeded. That speaks to insight, not luck. Over the following weeks, Talia watched Queen Meridian's recovery with a mixture of pride and anxiety. The tape repairs held perfectly, showing no signs of degradation or failure. As the natural healing progressed, the silver patches became less of a temporary fix and more of a protective layer, guarding the new growth beneath. A young dragon named Wren, barely out of adolescence, began accompanying Talia on her daily visits. Wren was fascinated by engineering and had pestered Josette until the scholar agreed to let him observe the recovery process. How did you know it would work? Wren asked one morning as they watched Queen Meridian perform gentle wing exercises under Brennick's supervision. I didn't know, Talia admitted. I just saw that everyone was trying to force a solution instead of working with the body's natural abilities. Sometimes the best help is the kind that gets out of the way. But you did more than get out of the way, Wren insisted. You provided exactly the right kind of support. That's skill, not accident. Talia considered this. Maybe it's about listening. Really listening to what the problem is telling you rather than imposing what you think the solution should be. On the 28th day after the initial repairs, Forge Master Brennick made the decision to begin removing the tape. The process took most of the afternoon, with Talia carefully peeling away each strip while monitoring scanners confirmed the underlying healing was complete. As the last piece of tape came away, Queen Meridian's wings were revealed in their restored glory. The membrane showed faint silver lines where the tears had been, like scars that caught the light, but the structure was sound and whole. The crystalline bones had regained their strength, the new growth so perfectly integrated that only the scanners could detect where breaks had been. She began wrapping tape around the fractured sections, creating overlapping layers that provided support without rigid immobilization. She worked her way along each fracture line, constantly checking with Queen Meridian about pressure and comfort. The bone needs to be able to flex slightly, Talia explained as she worked. Complete rigidity would prevent the natural healing process. But uncontrolled movement keeps reopening the fractures. This provides just enough support to keep everything aligned. The second wing took even longer because the damage was more extensive. Talia's shoulders ached and her fingers cramped, but she pushed through, knowing that incomplete repairs would be worse than no repairs at all. The watching engineers began offering suggestions, their initial skepticism transforming into engaged problem-solving. When Talia finally stepped back, both of Queen Meridian's wings were covered in crisscrossing strips of silver tape. It looked absolutely ridiculous, like a patchwork quilt made by someone with no sense of aesthetics. Several of the younger apprentices struggled to contain their laughter at the sight. But when Queen Meridian carefully extended both wings, testing their range of motion, the laughter died away. The wings moved smoothly, the tape flexing with each adjustment. The membrane no longer gaped open in ragged tears. The fractured bones held stable alignment without the grinding sensation that had accompanied every previous attempt at movement. It feels different, Queen Meridian's mental voice carried wonder. But functional. There is no pain when I move. The constant ache from misalignment has faded to almost nothing. Talia wiped sweat from her forehead. You can't try to fly yet. The tape is holding, but your body needs time to start the actual healing process. Complete rest for at least 4 days, then we can begin gentle exercises. Forge Master Brennick placed a massive hand on Talia's shoulder. In 40 years as Forge Master, I have never seen anything quite like this. You didn't try to fix what was broken. You simply gave it the support needed to fix itself. Callum Reed approached, his expression thoughtful rather than skeptical now. I owe you an apology, Apprentice Vex. I dismissed your idea because it seemed too simple, too crude. I forgot that elegance isn't always found in complexity. We all forgot, Josette added softly. We were so focused on demonstrating our expertise that we stopped thinking about what the Queen actually needed. Queen Meridian's presence filled the room, touching every mind with gentle warmth. Young Talia has given me something precious. Not just functional wings, but hope. For 5 days I believed I would never fly again. Now I can imagine the sky beneath me once more. Talia felt her face flush with embarrassment. I just tried something different, Your Majesty. That's all. That is everything, the Queen replied. When conventional wisdom fails, those brave enough to try something different make the difference between despair and possibility. As the engineers began setting up monitoring equipment and creating a care schedule for the coming days, Talia quietly gathered her things. Her first day on the Grand Citadel had been nothing like she expected, but somehow it felt right. She had come here to learn advanced engineering techniques from masters of the craft. Instead, she had reminded them that sometimes the best solution was the simplest one, and that fresh eyes could see what experienced ones had overlooked. It was a lesson worth learning on both sides. The first rays of dawn painted the Grand Citadel in shades of gold and amber when Talia returned to the medical chamber on the 4th morning. She had visited every 6 hours since completing the repairs, checking the tape's integrity and monitoring Queen Meridian's progress. Each visit had shown improvement, but Talia remained cautiously optimistic rather than confident. The chamber was quieter now than during those first chaotic hours. Most of the emergency equipment had been removed, replaced by long-term monitoring systems that hummed softly in the background. Queen Meridian lay in the same position, but something fundamental had changed. The tension that had marked every line of her body was gone, replaced by an air of peaceful rest. Josette was already present, making notes on a data pad. The young dragon scholar had barely left the Queen's side since the repairs began. "Good morning, Talia. I was just about to send for you." "Problems with the tape?" Talia asked, moving closer to examine the repairs. "The opposite," Josette's eyes sparkled with excitement. "Forge Master Brennick wants to run a deep scan this morning. He thinks we might see significant progress. But that's fighting against the wing's fundamental nature." She moved to the nearest tear in the membrane, gesturing without touching. "Dragon wings need to flex and adjust constantly during flight. They're not rigid structures. Every fusion technique you've tried adds stiffness, creates points of resistance that the wing's natural movement fights against. That's why the repairs keep failing." Forge Master Brennick's eyes narrowed thoughtfully. "Continue." "The tape doesn't try to heal the damage," Talia explained. "It just holds the pieces in the right position. It's flexible enough to move with the wing's natural motion but strong enough to provide support. If we stabilize the structure temporarily, Queen Meridian's own healing abilities should be able to bridge the gaps." "Should be?" Callum emphasized the uncertainty. "You're proposing we gamble the Queen's recovery on a should-be?" Queen Meridian's mental voice interrupted the brewing argument. "Master Reed, we have been gambling on should-be for 5 days now. Every approach has failed. Perhaps it is time to try something that sounds foolish rather than something that sounds sophisticated." Josette stepped closer to Talia, examining the tape with scientific interest. "The material does have interesting properties. The adhesive would need to bond with the membrane's surface without damaging the cellular structure beneath. It's designed for emergency repairs on living tissue," Talia said. "We use it in field medicine when proper equipment isn't available. It won't interfere with natural healing." Brennick made a decision. "Show us. If the Queen consents, demonstrate your approach on one of the smaller tiers." Talia's hands trembled slightly as she cut a strip of tape. This was insane. She was a 19-year-old apprentice who had been on this planet for maybe 3 hours, and she was about to attempt a repair that masters with centuries of experience had deemed impossible. But maybe that was exactly why she could see the solution. She wasn't bound by centuries of established practice. She didn't know what was supposed to be impossible. She approached the Queen's left wing, choosing a tear about 6 inches long near the middle section. "Your Majesty, this might feel strange. Please tell me if anything hurts or feels wrong." "Proceed, young Talia," the Queen's presence in her mind felt warm and encouraging. Talia gently cleaned the area around the tear, removing residue from failed bonding agents. The membrane felt like silk over flexible cartilage, warm and alive under her fingers. She carefully aligned the torn edges, noting how they wanted to naturally come together but couldn't quite bridge the gap. She applied the tape in overlapping strips, working from one end of the tear to the other. The adhesive bonded immediately, pulling the membrane edges together without forcing them into unnatural positions. The tape flexed when Talia pressed gently on the surrounding area, moving with the membrane rather than restricting it. The watching engineers leaned closer, their skepticism giving way to cautious interest. Even Callum Reed uncrossed his arms, studying the repair with focused attention. "How does that feel, Your Majesty?" Talia asked. Queen Meridian carefully flexed the section of wing where Talia had worked. "Strange but not painful. There is support where before there was only weakness. The pulling sensation from the tear has diminished." Encouraged, Talia moved to the next tear. This one was larger, nearly 10 inches, and the edges had begun to curl from days of failed treatments. She worked slowly and methodically, using her fingers to gently coax the membrane back into proper alignment before applying the tape. Josette crouched beside her, watching every movement. "You're not just covering the damage. You're reshaping the stress distribution across the entire area." "Exactly," Talia said, applying another strip. The wing was compensating for the injury, pulling tension away from the damaged areas. That was preventing natural healing and causing secondary damage. The tape redistributes that tension evenly. She worked for over an hour on the membrane tiers, developing a rhythm as she went. Cut, clean, align, apply, smooth. Some tears required multiple layers of tape to provide adequate support. Others needed only a single strip precisely placed. The fractured wing bones presented a bigger challenge. The crystalline structure was smooth and hard, not an ideal surface for adhesive bonding. Talia studied the fractures carefully, noting how they radiated from 3 main impact points. "I need to create compression," she said, more to herself than the watching crowd. "Like a splint, but one that allows controlled movement." Queen Meridian's eyes opened, and Talia felt the touch of her consciousness like a warm breeze against her thoughts. Dragon telepathy was supposed to feel invasive, according to the orientation materials, but the Queen's presence felt gentle, almost apologetic. "Young one from Earth," the Queen's mental voice held a musical quality that speaking could never capture. "I am sorry your first day involves witnessing such a spectacle of failure." Talia found her actual voice. "Your Majesty, you saved 300 people. That's not failure." "Perhaps not," Meridian's massive head lifted slightly. "But I fear I will never fly again. My healers tell me the damage is too extensive, too complex. The wings may heal enough for me to glide short distances, but true flight requires perfection of structure. Every repair we attempt fights against the wing's natural flexibility." Talia moved closer, drawn by curiosity stronger than nervousness. She studied the damaged membrane, the fractured bones, the failed patches. The engineers were using techniques that represented centuries of advancement, methods refined to near perfection. And yet everything failed. Her mind started working the way it always did when confronted with a broken system, seeing past the complexity to the core problem. The Citadel's engineers were trying to restore the wings to their exact original state, to rebuild what was broken as if the injury had never happened. But Dragon wings weren't machines that could be disassembled and reassembled. They were living structures that healed and adapted. What if everyone was thinking about this wrong? "Forge Master Brennick," Talia heard herself say. "May I examine the Queen's wings more closely?" The chamber fell silent. 20 pairs of eyes turned toward her, and Talia felt the weight of their expertise, their years of experience, their probably justified skepticism that a teenage human who had been on the planet for less than 2 hours could see something they had missed. But Brennick nodded slowly. "Queen Meridian, do you consent?" "I do," the Queen's mental voice held a note of curiosity. "The child sees something. I can feel her mind working." Talia approached the damaged wing, her hands already itching to touch, to understand. Up close, she could see how the membrane structure resembled a complex weave, organic fibers interlaced with crystalline threads. The tears hadn't just separated the material but had disrupted the entire pattern, creating cascade failures that spread beyond the initial damage. She looked at the fractures in the wing bones, noting how they radiated from impact points but also how smaller cracks had formed where the bone had tried to flex while damaged. Every sophisticated repair attempted had added rigidity, fighting against the wing's need to move and bend. An idea formed in Talia's mind, so simple it felt almost stupid. But sometimes the stupid ideas were the only ones no one had tried yet. She turned back to Forge Master Brennick and the assembled experts. "I think I might know how to help. But you're probably going to think I'm crazy." Callum Reed crossed his arms. "At this point, crazy might be exactly what we need." Talia walked back to where she had dropped her backpack near the chamber entrance. Every engineer in the room watched as she knelt and began rummaging through the contents. She pushed past her data pad, her tool kit, and the carefully packed orientation materials until her fingers closed around a small box near the bottom. Inside the box, wrapped in protective film, was a roll of heavy-duty repair tape. Her uncle had pressed it into her hands the night before she left Earth, grinning as he told her that every engineer needed good tape, no matter what planet they ended up on. Talia had laughed and packed it away, never imagining she would actually need it. The silver roll felt light in her hands as she returned to Queen Meridian's side. The assembled experts stared at the tape with expressions ranging from confusion to outright disbelief. "What is that?" Josette asked, her head tilting in the way dragons did when genuinely puzzled. "It's called repair tape," Talia explained, peeling back the edge to reveal the adhesive surface. "On Earth, we use it for temporary fixes on everything from water pipes to spacecraft hull breaches. It's strong, flexible, waterproof, and it bonds to almost any surface." Callum Reed's skeptical expression deepened. "You want to fix Queen Meridian's wings with tape? We've tried the most advanced bonding agents in 3-star systems, and you think primitive adhesive strips will succeed where molecular welders failed?" "That's exactly why it might work," Talia said, warming to her argument. "All of your advanced methods are trying to permanently repair the damage, to rebuild the wings as if they were never broken." The transport pod touched down on the landing platform with a soft hiss, and Talia Vex pressed her face against the viewport, drinking in the sight of the grand citadel. Towers of polished obsidian spiraled toward the clouds, connected by bridges that seemed to float without support. Dragons of every size and color wheeled through the sky, their wings catching the afternoon sun like stained glass windows come to life. Talia shouldered her worn backpack and stepped out onto the platform. At 19, she was technically an adult, but she felt like a child playing dress-up in her crisp new apprentice uniform. The Interplanetary Engineering Exchange Program had selected her from thousands of applicants, calling her approach to mechanical problems innovative and fresh. Talia suspected they really meant weird and unconventional, but she had stopped trying to fit into normal categories years ago. A towering figure waited at the platform's edge. Forge Master Brennick stood nearly 7 feet tall, his scales a deep bronze that spoke of centuries under forge fires. Unlike the winged dragons that filled the skies, Brennick belonged to the earthbound caste, dragons who had traded flight for incredible strength and an intuitive understanding of how things worked. "Apprentice Vex," Brennick's voice rumbled like distant thunder. "Welcome to the Grand Citadel. I wish your arrival came under better circumstances." Before Talia could ask what he meant, Brennick turned and strode toward a large archway. She hurried to keep up, her shorter legs struggling to match his pace. They moved through corridors lined with workshops where dragons and humanoids worked side by side, crafting everything from delicate clockwork to massive engine components. "The Queen is injured?" Talia ventured, piecing together fragments of hurried conversations she had overheard during the journey. Brennick's expression darkened. 5 days ago, a section of the northern mountain range began to collapse. Old mining tunnels, poorly maintained, finally gave way. Queen Meridian flew into the avalanche to redirect the falling rocks away from a village below. She saved 300 lives. He paused at a set of massive doors. But the forces involved, the weight and speed of those boulders, they destroyed her wings. He pushed open the doors, and Talia stepped into chaos organized as a medical theater. The chamber was enormous, its ceiling lost in shadows far above. At the center, on a platform designed for someone of tremendous size, lay Queen Meridian. Talia had seen pictures of the Queen during her orientation, but no image could capture the reality. Meridian stretched nearly 40 feet from nose to tail, her scales shifting between silver and pale blue like moonlight on water. Her head, currently resting on crossed forelimbs, bore a crown of crystalline horns that grew naturally from her skull. But it was her wings that commanded attention, and not in a good way. The left wing lay completely flat, its membrane torn in multiple places. Some tears were small, no bigger than Talia's hand, but others gaped like wounds, edges curled and discolored. The wing bones themselves, visible through the translucent membrane, showed fractures that spiderwebbed through the crystalline structure. The right wing looked even worse, twisted at an angle that made Talia's stomach clench with sympathetic pain. Around the Queen, at least 20 engineers worked with focused intensity. Talia recognized some of the equipment from her studies: resonance scanners, molecular welders, biofusion arrays. These were the most advanced tools in known space, operated by masters of their craft. A young dragon, smaller than the queen but still twice Talia's height, noticed their arrival. Josette had scales the color of autumn leaves and eyes that flickered with worry. As the queen's personal aide and a scholar of biomechanics, she had been coordinating the repair efforts. "Forge Master, the grafts are failing again," Josette reported, her voice tight with stress. "The biofusion arrays can't get the cellular structures to bond. It's like her body is rejecting every material we try." Brennick moved closer to examine a section where engineers had attempted to bridge a tear with synthetic membrane. As Talia watched, the carefully placed patch began to wrinkle and pull away, the edges curling despite the adhesive compounds holding it in place. "We've tried 17 different approaches," said a grizzled engineer whose name badge read Callum Reed. His voice carried the frustration of someone who had poured days into an impossible task. Crystalline fusion, organic grafts, synthetic replacements, even experimental nano-repair systems. Nothing holds for more than a few hours. Talia pressed her hand against the viewport, watching until the citadel disappeared beyond the horizon. She had come to this world as an apprentice, uncertain and inexperienced. She was leaving as a master engineer, not because she had mastered complex techniques, but because she had understood a fundamental truth. The best repairs were the ones that supported healing rather than replaced it. The best solutions were the ones that worked, regardless of how simple or sophisticated they appeared. And the best teachers were sometimes the students brave enough to question conventional wisdom and try something different. As the stars stretched into lines and the ship jumped to faster than light travel, Talia touched the medallion at her neck and smiled. She had fixed a queen's wings with nothing but tape and common sense. It was the most ridiculous and wonderful achievement of her life, and she couldn't wait to see what impossible problems she might solve next.